Okay, welcome everyone, and we again learn for Yehuda, Shimon Yehuda ben Gittel, and Mel, make sure when you speak to Shimon, tell him we're all davening for him, and we're looking forward to him joining us as soon as possible.
Answer sure.
We're holding on the top line of Daf Chavav Amud Aleph. Debei Bar Morion Bereder Ravin, in the house of Bar Morion, the son of Ravin, Ki Avinov Tzei Kisna, when they would beat flax, they would beat the flax to get rid of the chaff. So when they would beat the flax, Hava Ozil Raksa, the chaff would go, Umaske Inshe, and it would hurt people. So also the Kamei to Ravina, they came before Ravina and they said, listen, tell him to stop beating his flax. Amar lahu, he said to them, Ki amrinan moider Rabbi Yossi begiri delay. That Rabbi Yossi agrees where it's a person's direct arrow. Hani mili deka ozli mikoichet. That's only if it comes from his strength. Hacha zikahu. This is a wind, deka mamtila. This is a wind that brings it, and since it's with the partnership of the wind, since it's with the partnership of the wind, it doesn't. Since it's with the partnership of the wind, it's not considered his direct damage. So Maskva Mar Bar Vashi, says, "Ma'ishna mezoira v'ruach misayasai." Why is it different than one who winnows? By throwing it up with a rake, and the ear removes the chaff, and yet it's a deraisa. It's one of the 39 malachas. So you see, it's considered your work, even though it's with the enlistment of the wind. So Amru Kamei to Mereimer. So they said this argument before Mereimer. Amalahu, and Mereimer agreed with it. And just like you're chayav for winnowing in Shabbos, you have to stop pounding the flax even though the chaff is brought by the wind. Ravina disagrees. Ravina holds you can't bring a raya from Shabbos because, as Rashi says, you cannot learn out mammon from Isura. You cannot learn money from Isser. Isser Shabbos is different. By Shabbos, Meleches Machshavas Asra Torah. The Torah asks if you're doing a creative activity, and this is a creative activity. But by money, you're only chayv to distance if it's your direct arrow without the assistance of the wind. However, the Gemara asks a different question on Ravina. Ravina Maishna, from that which we learned in Bava Kama, Megeit Sayotze Mitachas Apatish. We said if a blacksmith bangs with his anvil and a spark flies out, the hizik, and damages someone, over there, the chayiv l'shalom, he has to pay. And there it's also carried by the wind. Says Gemara, there's an essential difference. Hosam nichalei delezel. Over there, he wants that the wind should carry the spark out. He wants the wind to carry the spark out because he doesn't want it to fall on his property and cause a fire. Here he doesn't want the chaff to blow at people, and therefore that's why he's not responsible, since it's done with the enlistment of the wind. You shouldn't plant a tree near your friend's field unless you distance it from his border 4 amas. Echad gafanim, whether this is vines, ve'echad kol ilan, or any other tree. The idea over here is, and getting back to Mark, who is here for 2 shiurim in a row now. Very good, Mark. I know if I learn 10 blot tonight, you'll be here for 10 in a row.
Maybe snoring to regular them.
Now, and Mark, that's from your friends.
What are friends? There's a little static. I didn't hear it.
I'm good. Good. At least some people recognize static when they hear it.
That wasn't static. You know what that was.
Now, So anyway, the reason why you have to distance, why Mark has to distance from Shelley his tree, his vines, is because he needs to bring the oxen with the plow around his vines to do work. So therefore he has to leave 4 amas till the border of Shelley's property, otherwise his ox will encroach when it does the avodas hakerem, when it does the work in the vineyard, it'll encroach on Shelley's property. So as the Mishnah says, Adam Ilan Samach L'Stei, right? He shouldn't plant his tree or his vineyard near Shelley's field, unless he distances 4 amas, echad gafanim, whether it's vines, ve'echad kol ilan, or any tree. You get a big time, but if there's a wall, so then if he wants, he can go up to the property lines. Each one could go up to the property line, because obviously it's not going to encroach on the property because there's a wall there. Now here Mark doesn't listen to rules. And he plants his tree next to Shelley's property, and Mark's roots go into Shelley's field. So Mamek Gimel Tvachim, Shelley could dig up the roots to the depth of 3 Tvachim in order that it shouldn't invade his plow. It shouldn't get in the way of his plow. Now, let's say Shelley wants to make a well, or a cave, or a pit. So there, if he was digging a pit, a trench, or a cave, then he could go straight down, cut, and Shelley could keep the roots. Now, that's the way I'm learning, although the Gemara is going to question who keeps it. If he has to give it back to Mark, or he could keep it. The Gemara is going to talk about it. Now, we said that Mark has to distance his vineyard 4 amas in order to have room to work around the perimeter of his vineyard. Tana Arba Amas Sha'amru, the 4 amas that he says he has to distance from Shelley's property, Kedei Avodas Hakerem, so that he should work with the plow around his vineyard. That's only Eretz Yisrael, where they use a wide plow that's wide 4 amas. Aval b'Bavel, in Bavel, where they use a narrow plow, then you only have to distance shtei amas. Tanya Namiyaki, we learned likewise. Lo yita adam yilin samach sechaver, Mark can't plant near Shelley, elin ken hirchik mimenu shtei amas, 2 amas. It says in our Mishnah 4 amas, v'anan tanan arba amas, elav kedishmul, when it says 2 amas, it means in Bavel, where the plow is only 2 amas. Why? Shmamina. Some just present this as a contradiction. Tanan, you see, if you learn enough Gemara, you see that this kind of a theme repeats itself many ways. Tanan, lo yitad ilan samach l'stei chaveri, Mark can plant next to Shelley's field. Elim ken hirchik mimenu arba amas. Asks a contradiction. But Tani, we said shtei amas. Amishmol like kasha kam b'Bavel, where the plow is narrow, so there it's 2 amas. Kam Eretz Yisrael, it's 4 amas.
How does this fit with the other Mishnah? It says 25 amas or 50 amas if it's a shikma.
So you mean what are you going to do with the roots?
Yeah, unless he does the same thing.
What?
Unless he could also cut the roots. Maybe he could cut the roots as well. I mean, but it's a lot more than 4 amas.
Yeah, so they asked that. They asked that kasha. And they say, one second, they say that it's talking about a field that's not asuya l'bayris. So since it's not asuya l'bayris, it's not a problem.
He's allowed to.
Yeah. But he could cut off the roots if there's a problem. Now, says the Gemara, Rava bar Rav Chanan have a lehano dikle a mitzvah de pardesa de Rav Yosef. Rava bar Rav Chanan had, when it says Rava bar Rav Chanan, that means it's not the regular Rava. The regular Rava is just called Rava. This is somebody else. This is Rava, the son of Rav Chanan. He had palm trees that were on the border of Rav Yosef's vineyard. What happened is, Hava Oset Sipure, birds came, Yosve B'dikle, they landed on Rava bar Rav Chanan's palm trees, V'nochse B'pardesa, and then they dipped down to the vineyard, Umifsidalei, and damaged the vineyard. Amalei, so he told, Rav Yosef told Rava, Zil kites, cut it down. Amalei, so he said, I have a distance 4 amas. It says I have to distance 4 amas. I distanced it 4 amas. Amalei, that when it's enough to distance 4 amas, that's only with trees. But to a vineyard, which you see there's a problem, but in Antwe, you have to distance more than 4 amas. Says the Gemara, whether to a vineyard or a tree, you have to distance 4 amas. 1 tree to another tree, or gafanim le gafanim, or a vineyard to a vineyard. Aval ilan le gafanim, palm trees to a vineyard, where the birds will alight on the trees and then damage the vineyard, but in Antwe, you have to distance more. So he says, look, I'm very scared to cut down a fruit tree. You want me to cut down a palm tree? I'm very scared to cut down a fruit tree. Amalei, I'm not like kaitzina. I'm not going to cut down a fruit tree. I'm a Rav, high dikla de ton kava. If a palm tree produces a kav of dates, also look miktsai, you can't cut it down. Adam eitz asada, it's very dangerous to cut down a fruit tree. Rav Chanina said, Lo shachiv shikkas bari, my son Shikkas did not die, ela de cuts to einasa b'lei zimne. He cut down a fruit tree before its time. I'm not going to cut it down. Now you're convinced that I'm a mazik. If I'm a mazik, take, it can be cut down. If you're convinced I'm a mazik, I allow you to cut it down. Mar inichaleil eketz. If you want to cut it down, you cut it down. But I'm not cutting down a fruit tree. Fruit tree. There are residents of Flatbush that will remember that when Rabbi Landau, before he built his new shul, Rabbi Landau had a tent, and there was a tree growing in the shul, and went out through the top of the tent. He didn't cut down the tree. Well, no, not cutting down a fruit tree. Now, next story. 6 lines from the bottom of Chav Vav Amud Aleph, moving at a very nice clip here this evening. I know. Rav Papa Havalei Hano Dikle, he had palm trees, on Mitzrei de Rav Huna Bereid Reb Yeshua, on the boundary of Rav Huna Bereid Reb Yeshua. Ozil Ashkechei, so Rav Papa comes, and he finds Dav Chafer V'Kakad Shrashav. He finds that Rav Huna Bereid Reb Yeshua were cutting out his roots, because his roots invaded Rav Huna Bereid Reb Yeshua's property, and Rav Huna Bereid Reb Yeshua was uprooting his roots. So Rav Papa was shocked. Amalei Mai, what are you doing? What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm doing a Beferish Mishnah. Amalei Tanana, Yishrashim Yotzim L'Seishal Chavera. If somebody's roots invade somebody's property, Ma'amik Shloisha, you could dig deep 3 Tvachim, K'dei Shelo Yaakov HaMacharisha. So Rav Papa says to him, but you're going deeper than 3 Tvachim. Amalei Hani Mili Shloisha, Ma'akar Chafet Tvei, you're uprooting it very deep. Amalei Ana Bay Rishich L'Ma'ars Kaf Chafarna. I'm digging storage pits, trenches, caves, and the Tanan, if you dig a well, a trench, or a cave, you could go down and keep the wood. So Rav Papa said, Imre le kule, I gave him a lot of arguments, and I wasn't able to vanquish him and stop him from cutting my roots, ad imrele, until I told him, Hada Amar Reb Yehuda, Meitzer she'irzik by Rabbim, a path that the Rabbim had a chazaka through your field, also the calcula. You're not allowed to take it away from them. So I told him, since there was a chazaka that my roots were there, now you can't disturb them. Now Taisus asks that he doesn't really understand what the kasha is, because over there it's a rabbin. A rabbin might be different than an individual. But anyway, the Basar Dinafik, after Rav Papa left, Rav Huna bar Yeshua said, I should have told him a different argument. Because the roots that Rav Huna bar Yeshua were uprooting were roots that were more than 16 amas away from Rav Papa's tree. And since the tree only derives its nourishment from 16 amas, further than 16 amas you should be able to uproot without a problem. And therefore he said, Amar amai loy amalei, why didn't I tell him, Kan b'sei sheish esrei amma, when do you develop a chazaka? That's with its first 16 amas, because there it derives nourishment from the ground. Kan chutz sheish esrei amas, but outside of 16 amas, I should be able to uproot it. I should have told him that. It's possible he went back and he told him it later. I don't know. Now, there is an ambiguity in the Mishnah, although it doesn't sound ambiguous. But if you look at the Mishnah, it says that if Mar planted a tree and Shelley was digging a well, a trench or a cave, he could cut the roots, go down even deeper than 3 tvachim that are invading in his field, and the wood is his. But it's not 100% clear the wood is whose. It sounds like it's Shelley's. But it could mean that the wood belongs to Mark since it was his tree. So the Gemara is not exactly sure what it means. And Mark says to himself, thank God that I'm here to protect my interests. Now,
all about good neighbors here, right?
Right. Now, Boy mine Yaakov Hadaiva merav Chista. Yaakov Hadaiva asked Rav Chista, Eitzim Shalmi, who gets the tree, the roots? Does Mark get it because it was his tree? Or does Shelley get it, first of all, as a compensation that he had to do this digging? Shelley says, what am I, a root digger? You know? Amalei Tanitua. We learned it in the Mishnah. Shrashe Elon Shel Hedyet. If Mark has a tree whose roots, now he's starting up with, he's starting up with someone he shouldn't start up with. His roots are going into Hektish property. He's starting up with God. So Shrasha Ilan Shel Hedyet Abon B'Shel Hektish. They invade the property of Hektish. Loy Nenin, you can't benefit from those roots. But V'loy Moyelin, there's no Me'ilah. Now, why shouldn't there be Me'ilah? If the roots belong to Hektish because it's in Hektish's property, then there should even be Me'ilah. If it belongs to Mark, so the Gemara says, if it belongs to Mark, that's why there's no Me'ilah, because it's really his. Technically it's his. We just say that you don't benefit since it's on the grounds of Hektish, you're not going into Hektish and touching it, you shouldn't benefit. But if we go after the land, so then if we go after the land, then it should be Hektish's, and then it should be Mila, it should be trespass, you should have to bring a carbon. Amai loy mailan. So Gemara says, yeah, but it's not consistent, because Elamai Basar Ilan Azlinan, we go after the tree, a Maseifa, Shel Hektish Habon Mishel Hedyet, if the roots of Hegdish invade Mark's property, loy nenin v'loy molen. Again, you can't benefit from it since it comes from Hegdish, but there's no Meila. But if we say that it goes bust of the tree, then there should be Meila. So the Gemara says, no, the truth of the matter is once you're makdish something, what grows from what you're makdish, there's no Meila by Gidulin. No matter where it comes from. That's just halach and Meila. Midei area has nothing to do with our sugya. Because Gidulin abon la'acham mekanaskinan. We're talking about that after you makdish the tree, it had growths. And growths that come, the kasavar ain't Meila b'Gidulin. There's no Meila in growths. The Meila is only what you're makdish. What grows afterwards, there's no Meila. Ravina says there's another way to reconcile over here. Loy kasha, kan b'soich sheish esrei. If it's within 16 amas of the tree, since the tree derives its nourishment, it's considered part of the tree. Kan chutz l'sheish esrei amas. If it's outside of the 16 amas, since the tree doesn't give nourishment, that belongs to the land where it grows. So therefore, then the answer would be as follows. If it's within Mark 16 amas, then when Shelley uproots it, he has to give it to Mark. If it's outside of the 16 amas, then when Shelley uproots it, he could keep it for himself. Now we're just going to pose the next question of the Gemara, but the answer to the question we're going to save for tomorrow. So I know this is a problem because some people won't sleep, but Amar Ula. If Marshall has a tree within 16 amas of Mark's property, Gazlanhu, that tree is a thief. Now the reason why that tree is a thief is we just explained that the tree derives nourishment for 16 amas. So that means part of the nourishment of the tree is being derived through theft from Mark's property. Now, since it's derived through theft, how could he bring Bikurim? In the first fruit, it says in Bikurim, "V'lakachta mereshis kol pri adama asher tovi me'artzecha." You have to bring it from your land. Here, since it's deriving partially nourishment from Mark's property, it's not your land. Taisa says a different reason. Taisa says that once the tree is a gazlan, you can't bring bikurim because Baitseya Beirach Niyatz Hashem, a snatcher that makes a bracha, Hashem gets angry. Remember that time, Marshall, that you stole somebody's lulav and you made a bracha? You weren't allowed to do that. Because it's
a bracha Acharon, I didn't get a bracha Rishona. Don't worry.
You know, it reminds me of what I said recently from the Chassam Sofer, that he holds that Asher Yotzer is a bracha Achrona on the food. Because the final digestion of the food comes when a person goes to the bathroom. So he holds that Asher Yotzer is a bracha Achrona on food. And he says, he answers with this akasha, because there's a Gemara that says that there's no bracha achrona that doesn't have a bracha rishayna. So the question is, what about Asher Yotzer? It's a bracha achrona, it doesn't have a bracha rishayna, but if you learn it's on the food, then it does have a bracha rishayna. They're clever. I mean, some Sofer doesn't need my haskama. Okay, Rabbi, so I want to just remind you a few things. First of all, we're going to do the Mishnah Yomis very shortly, but before we do that, I want to remind you that tomorrow night shir is at its normal time at 5 to 9. On Monday night, there's no shir because I did a double on Thursday so that we should be able to go to the Irgun and have the Q&A. On Tuesday night, because the shir it's a fast day, Shavasa B'Tamas, So there's shir is later at 10:15 on Tuesday night.